Real esoteric spirituality without all of the fluff, without all of the nonsense. This is the thunderwizard.com YouTube channel. Click subscribe and then hit the little bell button so that you can be notified whenever I've uploaded a video or when I'm doing the live Q&A videos. Good evening, Thunder Wizards. My apologies for being late. I got wrapped up in other things and I was thinking about what we were going to talk about and oops. So here I am. Today we're going to be talking about shamanic journeys, the astral plane, out-of-body experiences. I don't care what word you want to use. So this comes from questions that I get quite often, which are people wanting to ask about the astral plane. They want to know, is shamanic journeying, is this you traveling on the astral plane, or is it just your imagination, or is it a dream? And I got to be honest with you, I get annoyed at those questions, that's my fault, because the questions themselves are, in fact, honest questions. People are asking honest questions about what they want to figure out. But I guess what I find annoying about it is the underlying assumption. So bear in mind, everything has an underlying assumption. Everything that you think, just the idea of throwing out the word astral travel, the astral plane. In order to talk about the astral plane and have a successful discussion about the astral plane, you have to agree on what that means. And if you don't agree, in other words, if you have different ideas of what it is, you start throwing out these words, then, you can't have a discussion. It doesn't work. So when I hear these questions about the astral plane, I guess I get annoyed because I can hear that the assumption is completely different from where I come from. And one of my failings is, I expect people to see things the way that I see them. I've experienced things, I see things, why can't everybody see it this way? So that's my, my human failing there. But let me help you understand, listen, you can have your own beliefs. I'm not trying to make you believe or disbelieve anything. You can have your own beliefs about anything. But let me share with you my assumption about the universe and about you in general. So if we're going to get anywhere in my discussion about things, we first have to agree, and at the very least I need you to indulge me in let's share an assumption for a while. You can throw it away and grab your own. And before I get to explaining that, I'll share with you a vision experience I had in meditation years back. And this was after doing, the energy work that I teach, and I was, I was hot. The thing about just to let you know, the thing about the celestial qigong is that energy is designed for out-of-body travel. I mean, the vibration of that qigong will give you the ability to travel outside of your body. And that's one of the reasons that I did it. Besides the fact that it got me really high. I mean, it was the best high in the world. The only downside is that unlike taking drugs or power plants, you have to, in order to get the energy, you have to make a trade-off between your own ego and your own unconscious issues. And that's very challenging and painful, which is why most people don't have the tolerance to be able to do it. But I've been doing it a lot, and I was meditating one day after doing my practices, and I had this experience, went into an alternate reality, and I found myself feeling, well, imagine you're in a tiny spaceship with, a tiny spaceship, and you're out in the middle of outer space and you come across this huge planet or this huge whatever, some object that's just like enormous, thousands and thousands of miles high and wide, just huge. And imagine you're in this little spaceship and you're going up and you're looking up at it. That's what I felt like, except the object in the infinity of space was me, was my body. And I felt like this little tiny essence of light. And I was traveling up, and I was, if this is my body, I was just sort of like, scanning it up and, taking in how big everything, how big I was. It was my body, and I could see, it was my body in meditation. So I was seeing myself as I was meditating. And surrounded, what was surrounding me was the infinity of the universe, and stars and galaxies, and it was a very intense feeling and experience. And the feeling I got was that how I was, this little tiny speck of light, traveling up and looking at this enormous being in the middle of infinity. What came to my mind is that's how God feels. Now, I was coming out of Christianity. Actually, I was out of Christianity, but I was still influenced by that idea of an infinite God and all of that. So it was like this switch where God is this tiny little speck of light, and we are these enormous, infinite, powerful beings, and God is seeking to be part of us, as opposed to the other way around, where in normal monotheist, dualist religion, we are these tiny humans and we're trying to connect to the infinity of God. And then what came to mind was this, this message or this feeling that God is grateful to you when you allow him to be part of your infinity. So it's completely switched on its head, the whole idea of, tiny being and infinite God. Now, I don't believe in God anymore. I'm not a believer in that, but that has been the base assumption that I go now into all spiritual practices. Whatever we're talking about, that's my assumption. And it's not really like in the forefront of my mind, it's just the base of my assumption. And so I get annoyed when I hear people who want to, or who have an assumption that they're these tiny little beings in this huge universe. That it's just, it's opposite from that. I get annoyed when people want to ask me questions like, well, why would I have chosen to forget? If I chose to be in this life, why did I choose to forget? How come I can't remember all my past lives? And, I get annoyed because what I'm not hearing is the emotional need that they're coming from. Because those questions all come from a place of need, wanting to feel like they have some power. They feel powerless. And the idea of not knowing and not having power makes them feel like a victim. And they don't like that. And so when somebody like me comes along and says, you chose to be here, you chose to go through all of your challenges, they get upset because what they hear me saying is that you're a victim, that you're a tiny little victim, and that you chose to be a tiny little victim, and they can't stand that. Now, that doesn't bother me because I come from the assumption that I'm not a tiny little speck. I'm infinity. And I'm choosing to bring myself down into this tiny little 2-3-dimensional experience so that I can experience things. Look, everything we experience gives us perspective and gives the soul something to experience, even tragedy. Now think about that for a while. Why would the soul want to experience pain and challenge and tragedy? Why would it choose to do that? Well, for the same reasons that we watch sad movies or apocalyptic movies or horror films we want to experience it from a distance. We want to experience the intensity, the reality of it, because it gives, it gives a momentary charge to our lives, because we realize that there's a finiteness about life, that there's mortality. Our mortality, the knowledge that we will someday die, that we could die at any moment, that things could change, gives meaning to our lives. I definitely experienced this when it came to relationships. I will never, ever see relationships, romantic relationships, the same ever again. Because I was with somebody and we both knew that she had limited time. She would not be here for long, and I was forced. I mean, I can't talk for what she went through, because she was facing her own eventual literal mortality coming towards her. I was watching the end of the most perfect relationship I'd ever experienced. So when we were together, there was this unspoken agreement between us that we were just going to be in the moment, because we knew this could be the last one. And I have to tell you, it created a depth and an intimacy and a power and a freedom to the relationship that I don't think would have been there. Because normally in a relationship, you're with somebody and, we're going to be together for life. And then you start to get into your petty squabbles and what are you doing and who are you talking to and who's on that phone, and, well, why don't you do this? And, I wish you would close the door when you take a dump, and, all this stupid little nonsense that, I can't live with somebody who just leaves their socks on the floor, all that kind of crap. When if you're forced into the reality of this is your only moment with this person that you love, what now? All of a sudden, none of that means anything, and the only thing that matters is you're looking into their eyes and you're seeing and experiencing them. And this is it. This is all you're going to get. And I can remember having, no shortage of those experiences when, we were so connected and things were so amazing. And I remember telling myself, be here now, because you may never have this again. She's gonna stop being here someday, soon. So now when I think about relationships, when I think about people, I don't think about infinity or eternity anymore. And I don't think about, could I live with that person? If they did that for a living, could I live with them? And if they did, now it's like, everything is finite. Everything's going to come to an end. So is there something here for you to enjoy and experience? And if so, focus on that and forget about the rest of it. That's why we choose to forget. That's why we choose to allow ourselves to go through pain and misery and tragedy. You don't want to know the question why, because it makes the experience just so much better. So much better. So, bringing it back to the question of shamanic journeys and the astral plane. And again, I get annoyed by the term the astral plane. It annoys me because it sounds so new agey, and I get annoyed with the new agey thing because in my experience, and as a judgment, it's a generalized judgment, but it's my thing. In my experience, the majority of people who are in the new agey movement are usually victim mentality people who have tremendous trauma and they're trying to escape their feelings, and so they use the new age movement as a way to, like getting high and, light and fluffy and happy all the time, and that annoys me. It annoys me because it frustrates me because we are infinite. So my assumption about everything, my assumption at the core is that I am infinite God. I'm infinity. And I'm choosing to be here to have an experience. That's why I talk about life as being a video game. And again, the way I used to play video games with a pocket full of quarters, You know, you get upset when your guy died, and you know, and your game game over, and you get upset and you stomp your feet, and then you laugh and you go, I'm going to do it this time, and you pull out another quarter and you do it again. And that is the experience of the soul. When you're in the midst of the video game, it's not a game. It's deadly serious. And I have to get that. I mean, you get cramps in your arm with the joystick and the buttons, and I'm going to get, you know, it's totally the most important thing, and it's so real until you die. And then you take a deep breath and you go, wow, that was fun. I want to do that again. And so I get annoyed when I hear the childish insecurity, when I hear the immaturity of somebody who just like is giving up and just giving up to the misery and the, you know, it's like having a video game going and you've only got so many guys left, and it's like you get to a point where you're stuck, and it's like taking your hands off the control and like, I don't like this game. Like, dude, you put the quarter in, it's your quarter, play the fucking game. Don't give up. Play it. So what does that have to do with the astral travel, the astral plane? So again, the question I get a lot of times is shamanic journeying on the astral plane, or is it just a dream? Or, and my question most of the time is, what difference does it make? What value do you give to the astral plane that is somehow, you know, what is it about that? Because that's what I hear. What I hear in that is that they are wanting to ascribe the astral plane as being some special place, some spiritual place. You know, again, this is like Gnosticism. And if you haven't, please go back and watch my video about the origins of Christianity and Gnosticism. Gnosticism comes out of victim mentality. The entire movement and religion was started from people who felt hopeless and victimized. And so they created this dualist universe where there was this demiurge, and there was the, you know, the true God and the false God, and that earth was bad and heaven was good. And it's just dualist, fatalist, victim mentality, and I have no tolerance for victims. It's just my thing. I'm sorry. It's so annoying to me. It's annoying to me because it shows a lack of appreciation for what you have, which is why, again, in my experience, you know, this generalized people that I'm talking about tend to be, you know, people who feel, what's the word I want to look for? You know, the sense of entitlement, the same sense of entitlement that I hear when people want to complain about having to pay for things, you know, that they don't understand. You know, they themselves don't want to be inconvenienced with their time or their money, but when it comes to somebody else's time or money, they feel everybody should just give them whatever they want whenever they want it. Again, it's like a little kid. So what I'm trying to say is it's impossible to be a victim without being childish and immature. It's impossible. If you have a victim mentality and somebody out there is doing it to you, whoever it is, you are a child, you're an infant, you're immature, and don't you want to grow up? Don't you want to grow up? That's where the healing is. The healing is in growing up. So here's the bottom line. The astral plane is no different than any other plane. Let's just assume, for argument's sake, that shamanic journeys occur on the astral plane. Let's just assume that that's where they exist, on the astral plane. So what? There's nothing more real about the astral plane than there is about the physical plane. The physical plane is just as real as the astral plane. It's just another dimension. Yes, it's true that we might have some limitations about what we perceive here on this earthly plane. That's a possibility. But so what? It doesn't make it any different than this one. Bottom line, what I'm getting at here is that you are just as liable to be deceived on the astral plane as you are on the physical plane. And I think that people go into shamanic journeys with some hope that they'll get out of this prison and into freedom, into truth. And then they'll be safe. So I think a lot of people, want to go into the astral plane to escape. Listen up. You've been lied to about the nature of the matrix. What if I told you that you could hack into the matrix? I've done it, and I can teach you how to do it. Click below to watch the free video that I put on my YouTube channel a few years ago that has since gone viral. I discovered that the matrix, like everything else in the universe, operates from certain rules. There are 5 rules that govern the matrix. And then there is one secret technique that, to my knowledge, nobody else has figured out, that allows you to hack into the matrix, understanding these 5 rules and using these 5 rules to control, manipulate, and change reality so that you can have exactly what you want out of life. Don't allow yourself to be deceived by the victim mentality that has been thrust upon you by everybody in the media and in modern society, in history, in religion. You have the power to hack into the matrix, to control your life, and have the life of your dreams. Click below, watch the free video, and then learn how you can do what I've been doing for myself over the past few years. And if you are not conscious, aware of what's going on within you, your feelings, your motives, your desires, your assumptions, your beliefs, if you are not conscious of those things in this realm, you will be, at the very least, just as unconscious in the astral plane. So again, this is coming from the assumption that the astral plane is some true place where you're in truth. Assuming that that's true, what's going to happen is you're going to take all of your illusions with you. Here's one of the benefits of being in the physical plane. In the physical plane, you have more control over distancing yourself emotionally from your unresolved unconscious issues. There's a separation. There's a separation between the unconscious and the conscious. In your unconscious mind, you have all kinds of things. You have your true essence. Your true soul essence is going to be found there. Also, all of your illusions are going to be found there. So what ends up happening when you go onto the astral plane is that you become conscious of everything, which means that you may be living in your own self-deluded, narcissistic, unconscious garbage. That is another reality as well. So if you want to see the astral plane as a place of truth, and somehow it's more true than this earthly plane, and it's more, pure, then that means that if you are unconscious here, and you're wrapped up in if you have unresolved issues here, you're going to be living them there. That's why there are people that have differing experiences, out-of-body experiences, or near-death experiences. I get this again from people, blah, 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 Jesus is true because there's all these near-death experiences of people who went to hell. Yeah, that doesn't bother, that doesn't confuse me in the slightest. Of course. Especially if you're a Christian. Especially if you're a Christian, you're going to have all kinds of unresolved issues about yourself and self-hatred and self-punishment and guilt and torment. And it's going to be pushed down in your unconscious. And then you're out of your body. You no longer have this separation between conscious, subconscious, and unconscious. You're now just in, the full essence of yourself. Of course, you're going to create this hell. It's in your unconscious all the time. And now you get to live it. That doesn't talk me out of anything. It just reaffirms, my base assumption about how this universe functions. If you don't deal with it in this life, when you die, you are going to be faced with it. All of your garbage. And all of your beauty and brilliance as well. That's why for some people, when they have a near-death experience, they see this beautiful light and they see some being, whatever that, again, it's still their projection. Some people see Jesus. Some people see Buddha. Some people see angels and their pets and, you're going to see what you project. And if somebody's really wrapped up in being a Christian, but in some strange way, I don't know how this is, they've come to some conscious awareness of their spiritual identity. When they die, they're going to see this wonderful light, and Jesus is going to be there. And then what will happen is, as time goes on, who knows, maybe a few seconds or a few thousand years, I don't know, because time is different over there, then Jesus will morph into something else. Buddha will morph into something else. It's just your symbolism. So I think I want to say that I think for me, the most valuable way to look at this three-dimensional reality is that this is a shamanic journey. And so let's talk about shamanic journeys for a second. I got to turn the light on because it's getting dark. So taking a shamanic journey, first off, let's talk about what shamanic journeys are. Shamanic journeys are not for entertainment. So if you are somebody who wants to get into shamanism or want to travel the astral plane or whatever word you want to use because you don't like how you feel, and so you're going to take a shamanic journey in order to, I don't know what. My experience is that you're either going to have limited or no results, or the results you have are going to be dubious. Meaning you might have an experience, just like if you drop acid or smoke enough meth or whatever, you might have a hallucination. You can call that whatever you want, an out-of-body experience, an altered mind, I don't know. But I know that there's a very good chance that what you're going to be experiencing is just you will be experiencing your unconscious. And it'll be another, give you an example of a friend of mine who took, I forget, some power plant, I forget what it's called. You'd know it if I said it. But it's one that doesn't last a long time, and you smoke it and then you like trip out for, like 30 seconds or a minute or something, and then you come back. And there are films of people on the internet doing it. They smoke it and then you see their eyes like this, and they act like, something's in the room, or they try and climb out a window, or they, depending on who they are, they have a different experience. My friend did this and he said, you don't understand. It completely changed my perspective. It changed me. And this is a guy whose life is pretty fucked up. I mean, this is a guy who's, I could go into all the he's my friend. I still love him, so I don't judge him, but he's really screwed up. And my thought was, well, it didn't affect you enough to change your life for the better. So who cares? So my experience is that shamanic journeys are not for entertainment. They're not to feel better. A true shamanic journey is traveling to another realm. It might even be within you. Because again, remember my vision before. My vision before was that I was everything. And that my consciousness was this little tiny bead of light that was seeing this enormous me. So your experience of your consciousness is like that little bead of light. But you yourself are infinite everything. So when you have a shamanic journey, you are going to somewhere inside of you. And everything outside of you is something from inside of you. You know, the Huna perspective, the Hawaiian shamanic perspective, is really profound in that way. That there is no out there. Everything you see, everything you experience is inside of you. And so what a Huna shaman does is he doesn't necessarily have to leave his body to go do anything. What he does is if there's something in his life that needs changing, he changes it within himself first. So for instance, you know, people. You've heard about the guy, I'm sure I've told you about the guy who ended up healing all of these insane people in insane asylums. And he was in Hawaii, and they were in California, and the people of the insane asylum contacted him and said, will you work with us? We have these patients that are incurable, and they're throwing feces at people and biting people, and they're just really a problem, and you know, we can't even they have to be chained up all the time. And he says, yeah, I'll help them. And they said, great, when are you going to be here? He says, oh, I'm not coming there, just give me their files. So they ended up, you know, giving him the files, and all he did was whenever he was reading the files, chained to the wall, and he throws feces at whatever it was that caused him to have a judgment. Like, oh, what a screwed up person, or what a sick person, or how disgusting. Every time he had a judgment about that, he would then go inside of himself and change his experience of that, or meditate on changing his experience on how he viewed that person. And his goal was to view them as this infinite being, not as this limited, screwed up, sick person. He wasn't trying to deny that they were throwing feces. He wasn't trying to deny that. He was trying to get past that to the essence that was within and focus on that and bring that up. And he would do that. And the way he said is, I was changing the data inside of me. And I'm pointing to my navel center. He's changing the data, the information. And he says, when I can change that, then the external will change. And this is what's tough, because when I say this, it sounds like I'm talking about denial. Oh, everything is love and light. But the people in my experience, the people who always want to make everything love and light are trying to deny their anger and their rage. And that's not going to work. So you first have to get, you know, what he was doing is he was acknowledging his negative feelings. And he was working past them, through them, to get to the core on the other side. And you can't be a victim if you do that. You can't do it. Because no matter who it was, no matter what they did to you, as long as you see them and you have that reaction to them, and you indulge in that reaction, then you are reaffirming that that's what they are. And since everything is your own projection, you just keep recreating them that way. And I know you're listening to me thinking, well, if I just go into denial and pretend they're good, no, that's not going to work. You have to look at your own data, as this guy calls it, which are your feelings, your resentment, your fear, your rage. You have to acknowledge that and work through that. When you're able to work through that and acknowledge it, then you can see them for who they are and you can let them go. And then your world will change. Doesn't mean that there won't be bad people in the world. It just means that they will never come into your sphere of influence. I've had this experience for most of my life. And that's why I don't worry about anything. I don't worry about taxes. I don't worry about the government. I'm concerned about the environment and global warming, but I don't spend any time worrying about it because, number one, there's very little I can do other than change myself and help others. But I also know that if I continue to follow this path of self-awareness, that I will be able to create my own, that whatever reality that I create in my immediate sphere of influence and experience is going to be pleasurable. Just like there are places in the world that are really horrible to live in. There are some horrible places to be living right now that are a hell on earth. And there are some places that are heaven on earth. And the question is, how did some people end up in the hell part and some people end up in the heaven part? My general belief is that that you end up living in what you choose to create within yourself. So this is what a shamanic journey is meant to do. Now, here's the other thing I've learned about shamanic journeys. You never have a shamanic out-of-body experience unless the information that you are receiving is going to be beneficial for all consciousness. So if you want to take a shamanic journey because you want to go and experience another reality, like I said, because you want entertainment or you want to escape or whatever it is, that is not the function of a shamanic journey. Function of a shamanic journey is to give you access to evolutionary information, information that will create an evolutionary shift in all of consciousness. Now, somebody could make the argument that, well, if I take a shamanic journey which gives me an experience that helps me to evolve, then doesn't that vibrate out to the rest of consciousness? And of course the answer is yes. There's a very well-known neo-heathen-ish writer. I'm not going to mention his name. I keep wanting to call it a her because it's a transgender, but it's a he. And he writes about being a northern shaman. You probably know who I'm talking about. And he talks about having debilitating physical illness and debilitating pain. That is right there, that's a red flag for me. Because in my own experience, physical, especially pain, debilitating physical pain, means that there's some unresolved unconscious rage and some unresolved internal conflict. And when I have read this person's shamanic journeys, I don't hear anything other than pure fantasy. There's no information coming out of those journeys that give me anything to help my life get better. Nothing. All I hear is somebody talking about some crazy experience that they're having. And the fact that this person thinks that there is a realm called Midgard. They journey to Midgard, and that shows that you have a pretty dysfunctional understanding of the 9 worlds. We're in Midgard. If we were to journey to Midgard, that would mean there were 10 worlds, 9 including the one we're in. And that just doesn't make any sense. And so this is somebody who just wants to escape. This is somebody who's using the idea of shamanism to escape their pain and their own personal turmoil and conflict. Hi, Michael Denny of SpiritTao.com, and this is Celestial Negung Part 1. Celestial Negung means that this is power that is descending from heaven. And the idea is that we are all microcosms of the entire universe. You are the entire universe, and everything around you is simply the projection. You are looking within yourself. So when you look up into the stars at night, you're actually looking deep within your own body. When you look at the sun, the moon, the trees, the flowers, you're looking within yourself. This is Negung. And so what we're doing is we're simply releasing that infinity from within us. You are tapping into and releasing the power that is within our own body, our own cells, our own organs. So one of the reasons that I'm making this DVD is in the hope that the essence and the spirit of the teaching of the Shang Qing arts can be taught to the world at large, and it is my hope that the core essence of what the Shang Qing tradition is will continue to live and grow and evolve. As we move on into the Aquarian age, everything is changing. I don't need to tell you that. The entire world is changing, and what we are seeing now is that if people hold on to external things, they are very challenged in life. And those who are making the transition into the next phase that we are moving into in the world as we approach 2012, those who look within and find their source of strength from within, those are the people who are getting the most out of life and will make the transition into the next phase of evolution most comfortably. It is my belief that the Shang Qing tradition is one method whereby human beings can evolve into the next level of being in the most comfortable fashion and be able to take advantage of the rapid, energetic, mental, and spiritual changes that are going on in the world today. And I have nothing against people having issues. Everybody's working through something. I'm working through all kinds of things myself. I try, you know, and again, I'm subjective here, but my goal is to be willing to learn and to be willing to grow out of my limitation. So, I didn't, maybe you watched this video thinking that, and there's only two people, me and one other person watching, it looks like. But if you're watching this after I've recorded it, maybe you watched this thinking I was going to give you a step-by-step thing on how to take a shamanic journey, and we have those. I have those on my channel. And I believe that you should do them because they are, you know, they're part of our toolbox. Okay, so now let's go further. Here's something else that I think is essential. So let's just say, for argument's sake, that you want to become, you want a journey. You want to do a shamanic journey. You want to learn how to do that. Great. I support you in that. Let's go back to the first shamans. The first shamans were human beings who were hunter-gatherers. We're talking Paleolithic. Paleo means old. Lithic means stone. So they are old Stone Age people, meaning that they, you know, they just have no technology. They live, you know, our earliest ancestors barely had, you know, houses. A lot of them, you know, there's still people living in primitive situations that just, they make little beds out of, you know, jungle leaves and they sleep in them, and that's their bed. You know, they don't have houses, they don't have anything. So this was, the first shamans lived in that experience, and they came to find out that first off, they were just beginning to hunt and kill animals for protein. And this was important for our evolution because our brains need lots of protein. We need lots of protein and lots of calories. Without it, we would not have evolved these brains. And so that's why human beings started killing animals and eating them. And this is why we invented fire, because fire makes meat more digestible and kills, you know, bacteria and all kinds of other nasty worms and other things that animals have. And so we started consuming a lot more protein through the meat, which helped our brains to expand, and we started able to think. But then they became aware that these animals had spirits. And so the first, one of the first jobs of a shaman was to balance that. You know, these animal spirits are now flying around that of these animals that they've killed, and they needed somebody to be an intermediary between those beings. And that's why in traditional circles, you know, when you kill an animal, you do a ritual to let it go, and you thank it for giving your life to us and all of that, and you wish it well. There's a film on YouTube, which I may have put a link in somewhere, which was really amazing. There's a tribe in Africa that still hunts the way the first humans hunted, which means that the reason why human beings, why when you look outside and you see people jogging, do you wonder why they do that? It's not just for exercise. There's all kinds of ways to exercise. Why do people jog? Because that was the first way to hunt. And the interesting thing is, the reason why we can jog for 5 miles, 10 miles, 15 miles, the reason why we have this ability was because that's how we hunted. And what we would do is we would track game on foot. And the runners who were the long distance runners, they would take off and they would track, they would follow the footprints of whatever animal they were tracking down, you know, a deer or an antelope or something like that. And the animal would know that it was being hunted, and so it would run and they would just jog. They get into a pace and they just jog. Animals don't do that. Animals have short bursts of speed and then they run out of energy. So 5 miles, 10 miles later, these joggers would catch up to the animal, and the animal would be dying of a heart attack because they just couldn't keep running anymore. And then they would throw a spear at it or something like that to help ease its pain or help kill it. And this is all on video. They videotaped these tribesmen doing this, and they finally catch up to this whatever it was, gazelle or whatever the hell they were chasing after. And you see the thing dying, and it's having a heart attack, and it's dying. And you know, they throw a spear into it, and it is symbolic. They even say this is symbolic. This isn't what kills them. It's a symbolic thing that, you know, you're helping to end its life, and you're throwing energy into it to help release the spirit. And then as it's dying, this was the amazing thing, as it was dying, the hunters were taking sand, because it's in the desert somewhere. They're taking sand and they're pouring it on the body, like caressing the body of the animal to comfort it and to help its spirit disconnect from its body. And they're talking to it, and they're, you know, thank you so much for your sacrifice. This is going to feed my son and my wife, and we need this. You know, we're in a drought, and you know, we need your life, and we really appreciate your sacrifice. It was amazing to watch. And then the animal died, and then, you know, they pick it up and they put it over their shoulders, and they take the long hike back. You know, 5 miles or however long it was that they ran, back to where everybody is, and plop it down, and there's your food. So on the one hand, you know, it wasn't easy. You know, they weren't using arrows, they weren't using, you know, spears really. They were using their human body. And I think that's why we evolved to have 2 legs, so that we could hunt that way. We have 2 eyes in the front of our head and 2 legs, and we stand on 2 legs, and it's amazing. But that's where the first shamans were, the people in the tribe who would interact with the spirits of the animals and help them transfer. Now, modern Hindus do not, as you know, they don't do animal sacrifices. There's a lot of vegetarian Hindus. But the early Vedics were not vegetarians. And they sacrificed animals, just like the Norse ancestors and the Germanic ancestors. They did horse sacrifices. They would sacrifice a horse, and they sacrificed animals and all that kind of stuff. And from my understanding, there's a lot of Vedic Hindus who, when they do an animal sacrifice, they first have to go through a ritual to see if that animal, if the soul of that animal is ready to transcend to the next level. Like perhaps it's ready to become, what I would call a dwarf, a pre-human soul. And if so, then they do this ritual to ensure that the soul of that animal that they are going to sacrifice is going to evolve to the next level. So nothing is easy. And back then, in Paleolithic times, there was nothing easy about life. And there was nothing superficial. Everything had tremendous value. The life of every being had tremendous, to have one animal like that to eat, it had tremendous value. So these were who shamans were. First off, they acted as the spiritual gateway to help the spirits of the animals that they had sacrificed and killed for their own survival to move on to the next level. And then, in order to survive, human beings had to know where the herds of animals were. And so the shaman was somebody who could go into the astral plane to fly over the world, become, they'd shapeshift into an eagle or whatever the hell they needed to be. And they would fly over the world and find where, oh, there's a huge herd of bison over there. And then they would come back and they would say, yeah, 2 mountain ranges that way, there's a whole huge herd of bison, or there's going to be a huge herd of bison, or they're going to do something to attract the bison to come towards them. Bottom line is that they never did it just for fun. They never did it just for personal awareness. It was about survival. And so this means that when you go to do a shamanic journey, that you have a life and death focus. There's some information you need. You need a life and death focus to get you there. Because that information is going to help you to survive. Now, we don't need to do that anymore. We don't need to travel outside of the body to find the herds of animals. I have, in 2 blocks that direction, there is a building, the size of a half city block that is filled with more meat than anybody could eat in 10 lifetimes. And every vegetable and every possible food item you could imagine. So my physical survival, here I am at 205 pounds, my physical survival does not depend on me having to scratch every day to find my food. So what is the function of a shaman these days? The function of a shaman, a true shaman, in my opinion, is somebody who travels to the other realms to get information that we need for our spiritual survival, for our evolution. And in my belief, to do shamanic journeys for any other reason is at best frivolous. Because I never come out of the journeys that I've had, I never come out of those journeys going, wow, man, that was really trippy. I come out of those journeys with either like, I need to understand what I just saw, or I may have an understanding, I may have a message that I need to do something with. And I'll go another step further than that. Getting your information through shamanic journeying is limited. I would say that the idea is to open up the energetic channels within you so that you can receive that information while in your waking consciousness. So now maybe you understand why I get annoyed when people want to talk about the astral plane. So on the astral plane, so last night I slept and I went to the astral plane. It's like, I don't care. I got in my car and I drove to Glendale. So fucking what? It's just another location somewhere. Yeah, Glendale looks a little different here, but it's still here. You're still part of this infinity that is you. It is all you. Wherever you go, you are inside of yourself somewhere. Okay, so enough preaching. Let's see if there's a... I do have one guy on. Sven Filking question. Do you think animal spirit guardians are passed on through the generations? Well, that's a good question. I don't have a yes or no answer for that. And I have to tell you, this isn't my forte because I honestly don't care. Not that I don't appreciate whatever spirit guides I have. I know I have a ton. I know that they're around me right now. I don't focus on it because, for the same reason I don't like focusing on the astral plane, because it's frivolous. If they need me to know who they are, they will introduce themselves and say, my name is so-and-so. You know, for instance, I know that I'm sure there's more than one, but there's at least one female guide, spirit, whatever, ancestor spirit, use whatever word you want, that is with me all the time. And I have heard her voice a couple of times that I can remember. And the rest of the time, I don't see her or hear her. And the reason for that is because it's not about that. For me to spend time wanting to see her and talk to her is another way of trying to escape. She knows her job. She's here to help. She knows what she knows what her job is. She doesn't need me to try and talk to her out of my need to connect with her. She's here doing her job. And if I really need to hear some information, she will pipe up and she will say something, and I'll hear her feminine voice and I'll know it's her. You know, and I've had this most of my life. I think I've seen her once when I was having a near-death experience. But I don't waste any time thinking about it. And like animal spirits, great. You got them, great. They're there to help you achieve something. Something of value for yourself and for others. Now, that's my personal philosophy about it. So that doesn't have to be your thing. That's my personal philosophy about it. What I know from the ancestral Norse mythology is that each of us has a fetch spirit, a filcha spirit. And this fetch spirit is an animal spirit. And it's an animal spirit that each of us gets at birth. And if you see that animal spirit while you are in your waking consciousness, you are going to die. So if you see it in your dreams, if you see it in your visions and meditations, then it is there to guide you and protect you. And it is there to protect you. It's a protector spirit. I don't know anything about true Native American traditions, but it sounds a lot like the so-called Native American, animal spirit. This sounds like exactly the same thing to me. So from that, it doesn't sound like something that is inherited, but I don't need to believe that one way or another. That's just all what I know. Is it possible for a dragon spirit or something like that to be transferred? Sure, I'm okay with that. Since we're talking about dragon spirits, that would open up a whole new realm of discussion because, as I talked about last time, in the Taoist tradition, dragons are human beings that have achieved transcendence, immortality, enlightenment. They're no longer, they've gone beyond the physical vibration, and now they're something else. And we experience them as dragons. That's whenever you see a Chinese dragon, it represents a human being who has achieved immortality.
Okay, so be honest with me. You have tried practicing the law of attraction in your life. You have sat on the edge of your bed and you have focused on positive feelings and focused on bringing up good feelings about things that you want in your life, and you've had little or no results. If you're honest, in my experience, the majority of people who have really tried to use the law of attraction to manifest their dreams have been disappointed, and in some cases outright frustrated, and in some cases their lives got worse. Now there is an actual reason for that, and that is because the law of attraction actually doesn't work unless it is combined with the law of manifestation. And sadly, most of the law of attraction teachers out there, many of them well-intentioned, are only giving half of the recipe for being successful when it comes to intending and manifesting your life. My name is Michael William Denny of the ThunderWizard.com YouTube channel, and just like you years ago, I tried sitting on the edge of my bed and focusing on positive feelings. I tried to keep myself in a positive state of mind, and very little happened. And as a result, it was very hard for me to keep those positive feelings coming. And then I was told that, well, you have negative things in your life because you're focusing on too many negative things. But the problem was I couldn't turn my negative feelings off. But here's something that I've learned, and this is incredibly important. I want you to listen to this. You don't have to monitor your feelings. You can have all kinds of negative feelings. You can have sadness, you can have fear, you can have resentment, all of these so-called negative feelings that are supposed to bring you all kinds of negative things. You can have these feelings, and if you know how to practice the law of manifestation, it doesn't matter how you feel. And that to me was so liberating. Because listen, there's a lot of people out there feeling guilty and feeling unspiritual because they do have less than perfect feelings. And when things aren't manifesting the way they want, guess what happens? Naturally, you have negative feelings coming up. And if you've been told that your negative feelings will bring negative things, then you are then filled in with this feeling of guilt and shame, and then you go into this cycle of guilt and shame, and you can never get out of it. And it doesn't matter how many seminars you go to, or how many books you read, or how many videos you watch of people telling you if you focus on positive things will happen. None of that matters, because now you're filled with all of these negative feelings, and then you're afraid to take any action, and then nothing happens in your life. So I'm here to free you from all of that. It doesn't matter how you feel. The only thing that matters is, do you know how to properly intend? And that is what the law of manifestation is. When you combine that, then guess what happens? You start to have some positive feelings come back into your life, and then guess what happens? Then you can merge the law of attraction, because you can take those positive feelings and you can merge it with the law of manifestation, and you can focus that energy into your intentions, and then, in my experience, the law of attraction and the law of manifestation works every time. It has worked for me. I'm sitting here in front of my house. I'm not kidding you. My house is right over there. And I simply walked out of the front door of my house this morning and decided to make a video and tell you my experience of the law of manifestation and the law of attraction. So, if you want to get started, click the link and go to ThunderWizard.com and look for the Manifestation Mastery course, and click on that to get started.
So is it possible that there are what we would call elf spirits that are flying around, that are transferred from father to son, and it's a dragon? I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. So I don't know if I answered your question. The short answer is I don't know, but it doesn't bother me if that's true. I guess I'm just far more interested in the function of these spirits than I am with what they are. I mean, we get all wrapped up in how cute and how fun and look at this and yeah, and this spirit, and I get it, because it's a hook that hooks us into connecting to our infinite nature. And I get it. But to me, it's like I don't want to get wrapped up in all that. And I'm far more interested in, here's my experience. If I see something in a vision, if I, you know, for me, the way I would do it, if I were to have a vision of an animal spirit, instead of getting all stoked about, I have an animal spirit and, oh, yeah, I'm a spiritual person, instead of that, I would want to know, what does that mean? I would want to know why that type of animal, where was it going? You know, what was it doing? You know, it's just, again, for me, maybe it's just me, but when I have a shamanic experience, it's never arbitrary or superficial. It's never frivolous. You know, there's always, it means something. It means something big. You know, you know, I remember a vision I had a while ago. This was way back when I was in Idaho, and my ex-wife had dogs, and one of the dogs was old and was in the vet for something, and we didn't know if she was going to make it or not, and I meditated, or I think I dreamed, maybe it was a dream, and the dog was on the west side of the house, cowering underneath like a table and looking at me with fearful eyes. And I woke up and I said, the dog's going to die. Because the west represents, you know, the east represents the birth of the sun, the west represents the sunset. The symbolism was very clear. She was going to die. It wasn't a pleasant experience. And then I had a message. It wasn't a pleasant message. I mean, I don't even know if I told my wife or not, because I don't know if she could have handled it, but I knew she's going to die. And sure enough, within a couple of hours, the dog was dead. This is what I mean. You know, I mean, shamanic experiences are for me, they're just nothing to play around with. You know, and so I don't think that people should go into these things unless they have a real serious reason for it. And it's not that you're going to find death every time. It's that, you know, I like our first ancestors, our first shamans, they needed, their life depended on them being able to fly out of their body and find out where the animals were. Because if they didn't, they would die. They would physically die. Not only them, but the whole tribe would die if they didn't have that ability. So if we want to be shamans, it shouldn't just be because we want to have our own personal development. There's all kinds of ways to do that without having to escape into a shamanic journey. And if you are called to be a shaman, it means that probably the reason why shamans go crazy, or before they accept the mantle of being a shaman, is because probably the weight of the whole universe is weighing on them, and the weight of the seriousness of the need for human evolution is weighing on them, and it's driving them crazy. I know that was my experience. I tried so hard to be a normal person. I just wanted to fit in. That's all I wanted. I wanted all this shit to stop, and I just wanted to fit in with everybody. And I would try so hard to suppress all of my experiences and my thoughts. See, here's my experience now. I don't see auras. I don't hear voices, unless, you know, I have a shamanic journey or something. But I don't have any of those things. I don't put any value into any of those things. I don't take any value away from them. I'm okay with them. I think they have their purpose. My teacher sees auras and all that. But I don't put any value into it because it doesn't make me any more or less spiritual. I have chosen, I think, you know, the way I function, I have chosen to intuit things on I have chosen to intuit things on a knowledge level, where information will start bubbling up in my knowledge, and I have this, like, I have this chunk of awareness that I can't put into words about the nature of reality, and then I have to verbalize it before I can understand it. Or people ask me questions, and it isn't until somebody asks me a specific question that I'm able to take that information. But I am getting information all the time from all of the different realms. And I don't want or need to get out of myself to have that. I want to stay in this focus point of Midgard, where all of the other 8 directions are coming in and focusing to this intense nexus of power. That's how I want to be, and I think that is how we are designed to be. To have to go into another realm, or to go to be, I think that shows, you know, limitation, and I'd like to have less limitation. Anyway, I don't know what the hell I'm saying now. Let's see, so we got some more questions here. Sven Filking question, do you find Galder more beneficial than journeys? I was into the journey thing, but like you said, it is hard differentiating between what is fantasy and not. I have found Galder very powerful. I've been disciplined following your Galder teachings. Well, thank you for that. But for me, because I would be, you know, in ancient Norse society, there were wizards, and there were Galder practitioners, and there were Seath practitioners. And the Seath practitioners were the ones that went into trance and would speak the language of the gods, and the gods would speak through them, or the spirits would speak through them, or they'd have visions. You know, and the Galder practitioners would interpret the visions, or be able to know what was being said. But the Seath practitioners themselves don't know. They don't know what's happening. And there are some individuals that can do both, and there's probably, I obviously can do a little bit of both, because I can have visions and then come back and tell you what they mean, or research them and tell you what they mean. But for me, I'm just wired to be a Galder practitioner. I'm not going to say I'm not wired to do the Seed. It's just I much prefer understanding, and for that you have to be in your conscious awareness. If you give up your conscious awareness and become a vessel, you won't understand what's happening. And it's not to say that I get a lot of my information from the Seed shamans that I respect their ability, and there are a few. But even among those that have that ability, they still make mistakes. They still can get wrapped up in their own unconscious projections. And that is my job as well. My job is to say, that's your projection. That's not, I'll give you an example of that. There was a student I had who I believe is a Seed shaman, but I still think she has a lot of unresolved issues in order to, before she can really get a hold of her knowledge. And I won't get specific, but this individual would call me, and which normally I don't let my clients and my students do, but I wanted, number one, to see what abilities she had, and number two, I wanted to see what was going on in her unconscious, and I know that I would get both of that information. But she would call me and say, I have a message for you. I'd say, okay, give me a call, and I'd listen to her. And she told me a prediction. She said, here's what your partner has passed is saying, and this is what's going to happen in your life, and somebody's going to come in your life, and this is going to happen. And it sounded really great, and I acknowledged. I said, great, I'm looking forward to that. Okay, thank you very much. And I hung up the phone, and I said, well, we'll find out. If that happens, then I know that that was a communication from my past partner, or I have information on what her unconscious desires are. And it was the latter. Because time went by and what she said was going to happen did not happen. It still hasn't happened years later. It's been at least a year and a half. Still hasn't happened. And later on, as we were talking, and I was talking with this person, and this person was having romantic difficulties, and I said, "What is it that you want to do?" And what this person described was exactly what they said was going to happen to me. And I went, "Oh, this is their unconscious projection." And instead of being conscious of what they wanted at that moment, the need to call me on the phone and tell me their prediction was their unconscious way of saying, this is how I want to get out of this relationship I'm in. I want it to happen this way. And this is what happens when you have a shamanic experience that is your own unconscious fantasy. Because our dreams and our fantasies are either our fears, which we call nightmares, or our selfish, doesn't make them wrong, but there are selfish fantasies about what we want, or they are actual shamanic, dreams where you are in the, the whatever space, the other plane, and you're talking to an actual being. But then again, I pull back farther and I say, but that's still part of my infinite self. Just one of them happens to be more accurate towards my evolution, and the other two are valuable information to acknowledge and work through, but they're not going to be of any value to my life other than taking a look at what's in my unconscious. So, yeah, okay, Sven Filking question. What's your take on visitations from animals in this world? I have had recurring visits, and these incidents have really made me believe in messages from the other realm. Well, that's very clear from mythology that animals can bring messages. And, look, let's say you're an ancestor spirit and you are in the other realm. And you have this charge. Your ancestor is down there in three-dimensional reality, and they're doing the best that they can, and you can see what needs to happen, and you know things, and you want to help them. Then, if you go and try and knock on you're not going to be able to knock on their door and have a conversation with them because they can't hear you. There's that block. So what do? You send signs. I've got it in my other room, but I was given a huge crystal from one of my guides. And I won't get into how I got that. Maybe you know this story. But I got a huge crystal from one of my guides. And that crystal is a specific type of crystal, and it does a specific thing. And so there's a very clear message for me. And when I meditate on what those crystals are supposed to do, that's the message on what I need. So animals are just going to be another, this one was a crystal, but it could have been an animal, it could have been whatever. It's going to be however you can be best communicated with. If you're going to be able to interpret the signs from an animal visitation, an animal standing, or a crow comes in from a certain direction, or faces a certain direction, or flies off in a certain direction, then that's going to tell you something. I talked to somebody who said they saw up in the Sierras, they saw a black panther. That two people physically saw a black panther. And I said, you realize that's impossible. That can't happen. Those animals do not exist in there. There's no way that could possibly happen. And not only that, black panthers do not in broad daylight walk up to you. So if you see a physical animal that can't possibly exist, or if an animal does some really weird thing, then yeah, that's a message. But again, it depends on you. I think that's part of it. Depends on you. If you are predisposed to believe that animals are going to have a message, then that's going to be the way that your guides are going to communicate to you. That's my belief. All right, so I don't see any more questions here. I don't know that I really said anything that I wanted to say, but I said a bunch of stuff. Anyway, so yeah, that's all. A lot of things are coming, so please, those of you who are watching this after it's been recorded, go to courses.thunderwizard.com to see all of the things available. I'm going to start pushing the Matrix teachings, because I think that that teaching is probably one of the most valuable teachings I have. I think the matrix.thunderwizard.com, the 5 rules to master the Matrix, I think is in my mind is becoming more important than a lot of things I'm teaching, because if you don't have those basic rules and understand them, navigating this spiritual realm successfully, in my experience, it's a good assumption. It doesn't matter how you feel, doesn't matter what you do, you adopt those 5 rules as assumptions and you act on them. Everything else becomes secondary and everything else falls into line. And all the other stuff that you do, all of the rituals and all of the meditations and the shamanic journeys and everything else, you will have much more ability to take those experiences and turn them into something that will actually create evolution for you. So I'm going to be promoting that more as time goes on. All right. So yes, Finn Filking, we had a one-on-one session, didn't we? All right, my friend, thank you so much. I will talk to you guys all very soon.